So good evening, everyone, and just for those who are joining us online via Zoom channel, this is our second European full moon meditation. So my name is Phra Nicholas Thanissaro, and I'd like to thank Natalie for a glowing introduction and Champ for the soothing exercise session. And I hope everyone is feeling more relaxed and comfortable, and this will be a great advantage to us as we sit down to practice a meditation. For those who've never meditated before, and I think there may be some amongst you, I'd like to just start by explaining that meditation generally is a way of working with our awareness or our attention, which is normally caught up so much with the things around us that it is very difficult for us to bring our awareness back within the space of the body. And meditation gives us a way to do this by bringing the awareness to a place within ourselves, somewhere in the area of the abdomen. And this point at the solar plexus is particularly efficient if we are able to keep our awareness in that place, for helping the thoughts in the mind become more peaceful and also to take the mind deeper. So apart from just relaxing, it works with the quality of the mind so that the mind becomes more centered, more in balance with the body, and able to escape from some of the stresses and strains that normally hold us hostage in our everyday lives. But how exactly to get our awareness to come to that point? Generally, we need an anchor of some sort. Generally speaking, you may have heard of meditation working with the breath, and the breath is a good way to bring our awareness from its usual place outside the body back to a place within ourselves, because the breath follows down and the place it turns around between the in-breath and the out-breath is exactly at this point at the diaphragm or the solar plexus. So it gives us a handy point of reference. But what I'm going to suggest today is that instead of using the breath, which is rather like trying to hit a moving target, is to work instead with a picture or a feeling that you conjure up in your own mind. And a picture which might be easy for you to start with is something bright, like a picture of the sun shining, or maybe the full moon. It's a full moon night tonight, although you might not have seen it directly, or maybe a star, or perhaps a crystal ball. It depends on what you find easiest to imagine. But the important thing is to imagine that object as if you see it down at the center of yourself, at that point of the turning of the breath at your diaphragm. If the mind slips away from that, then you just bring it back again. This is the basis of the meditation we'll be practicing tonight. But that's not all. It's not just an exercise in mind control, because we need to be gentle with the mind. Generally, we start each time by, first of all, relaxing our body, because only if the body is relaxed is it possible for the mind to become relaxed as well. From there, we work with emptying our mind as much as possible of any worries or concerns, trying to empty up a space in the mind for us to work with in our meditation. And only then do we work with maintaining an imaginary object at the center of the body. And for those of you who have a particularly troublesome number of thoughts in the mind, you may also find it useful to work with something known as a mantra. You can see the words Samma Arahang written there, and these are words that are helpful for dispelling any unwanted thoughts from the mind, sometimes known as a thought blocker. So what we're going to be doing in a minute is a meditation, which in total will be about 45 minutes long, but because it's a full moon meditation today, we have a special little ceremony partway through where, apart from illuminating ourselves on the inside, we're also illuminating an array of candles in a pattern you can see there, very patriotic, I'm sure you can tell today. on the occasion of the full moon night. So partway through, I'm going to ask anyone who would like to join in with the lighting of the candles to come and to help to light the candle array, and then go back to your seats to complete the meditation with a loving kindness practice. So if you are sitting comfortably, I would like to say that you should sit up fairly straight in your chair if you can, or sit upright if you're sitting on a meditation mat. The way to put the hands together is with the right hand on top of the left hand. The index finger of the right hand goes up against the thumb of the left hand, and your hands just rest palm upwards in your lap. So if you'd like to make yourself comfortable now, and we will sit for meditation, as I said, for about 45 minutes. So if you'd like to settle yourself now for some meditation, and make sure you're sitting comfortably enough to be able to sit for a long, long time without having to move around too much. Close your eyes gently, as softly as you can. As usual, we take a few good deep breaths to ourselves, breathing intentionally deep, so that we can relax the mind as well as the body. We breathe not only for relaxation, but also to bring the awareness gently back to the body, allowing our breath to become softer as we relax. And the position we adopt should maintain our back fairly straight and our neck upright. Sometimes we assume our body is relaxed, but when we come to check, we find there are still places where tension lingers on. So we take a few moments to examine every single part of our body, to make sure there's no remaining tension that might encroach on our little bubble of relaxation. We relax our shoulders. From there we continue to relax our arms, down to our hands and our fingers. Relaxing our torso and legs, down to our feet and our toes. And we'll find that if we can get the body to loosen up, then the mind will loosen up as well. There are many signs that we need meditation in our lives, and most of them are to do with the calming of the mind. It may be because you're anxious about the past, or because you worry about the future. You may feel guilty when you're not busy, Or you may still be trying to multitask in spite of all the mistakes you're making. You may worry about good experiences coming to an end. Or you might simply want to live life more mindfully. But whatever your motivation from here on in, we're going to let go of anything that's still on our mind by not thinking of those things. So you can imagine that your mind is slowing down, becoming softer, even if it's not yet quite still. So with the consciousness inside the body, you put aside any worries or concerns in the mind and conjure up a sense of happiness and joy inside the mind, like tiny particles, completely filling our body and mind. From there, we imagine that inside our body is just an empty space. And within the space of our body, in our mind's eye at least, we conjure up a picture of the sun shining, or perhaps the full moon, a star, a crystal ball, whatever comes easiest to you. In order to come to the center, we just reach with our awareness, nuzzling and nestling our awareness up against the feeling inside the body center. So we allow our awareness to gravitate down towards the abdomen, not rushing, but reaching with the awareness towards the center of the body, which is like a point of reference or an anchor for the mind. That from now on will help prevent the mind from wandering. The bright object at our center may be shining bright like a spotlight or a bright sphere, or it may be vaguer than that. In the beginning, the imaginary inner object may be more of a feeling than something we see. We may feel the presence of that bright ball of light rather than seeing it. But whatever form the object takes, we stay with it, graciously accepting any form it may take. In the meantime, our awareness continues to nuzzle and nestle up against the center of the bright sun inside us. And we observe as if actually inside the sun rather than looking down at it. We accept it as it is, while bearing in mind the success factors that tell us the best way to observe in meditation, namely the 4 C's, concentration and comfort in balance, consistency, and checking afterwards to confirm that we are on the right track. We remain with this bright inner light we have uncritically. For now, during the meditation itself, we suspend judgment allowing the awareness to remain unperturbed at the center. The longer the mind has an unbroken connection with the center, the more we can connect with the profound sense of peace that comes from inside. If our mind slips outside the bright center, then that sense of peace will diminish. In the meantime, we keep bringing our awareness back whenever it's distracted in order to merge with the bright light. If the mind wanders, we check in again with where the mind is, bringing it back to the center point or at the center of the bright light if necessary. In the meantime, we keep the mind neutral and free of questions or commentary. If any new experience arises, we notice it and no more. We accept the experience as it is. We maintain an observant mind that just accepts what the experience is. There's no need to find an explanation for everything. We just observe and accept. And if we should have thoughts in the mind, we do our best to ignore them, or at least not to elaborate on them. Unless you're one of those people who has so many thoughts that it's impossible to avoid getting entangled in them. In which case you may need to make use of the traditional mantra, hearing the sound of the words Samma Arahang, Samma Arahang, Samma Arahang, repeated over and over again in the mind, as if the actual source of the sound is down there at the center of your body, along with the inner object. So, Samma Arahang, Samma Arahang, Samma Arahang, lightly, gently, and continuously. And with a special lightness of touch, maintaining our inner object, whether it's something we see or something we feel. Always at the center of whatever is there. Even if it's darkness, we can be at the center of it. But the important thing is the lightness of touch. Continue to maintain our attention on track in the center of the body, each to our own meditation for a few more moments in silence until we come to the appropriate time. off onto other things. Each time you realize, simply bring your attention back again to the center of the body as before. And in the meantime, we continue to keep the mind in stillness at the center. And as the peace energy keeps flowing in, we begin to notice a feeling as if we are becoming lighter. Feeling light is an indicator that peace energy is continuing to accumulate in the mind. Because energy, unlike matter, has no weight. If we have a lot of peace energy, our bodies will naturally feel less solid. Little by little, even without intending it, we feel as if we're becoming lighter. This energy lightens up our sense of being, leaving us with a feeling of weightlessness and transparency that spreads throughout our body and connects even beyond the limits of our body. And we will feel its expansion. In spite of the novelty of the experience, we maintain a mind free of questions or commentary. We don't encourage a skittish mind because a skittish mind is unable to connect with the peace energy. Meanwhile, we remain at the soft nucleus of the inner experience for a few more moments in silence. Now that our mind and the peace energy become as one, we continue to maintain our awareness at the center. We continue to remain in that ocean of peace energy while we slowly open our eyes and start to light our candles. So now is the time for us to illuminate the world by lighting little candles that we've prepared, feeling that candlelight radiating warm and bright, as we imagine that the candle symbolizes our inner light, our peace energy, or our positive intention at this time. So at this time I'd like to invite our representative to come to receive the candlelight in order to light up the array of little tea lights that we have prepared here. And at home you can light your own candle in the same way while keeping your mind at the center of the body. Anyone else who would like to join in can light their candles off Jay's candle and help to light the candle array for today. If you prefer to continue just with your meditation and your inner light, then that's also just fine.
what is a person's knowledge and experience actually worth? 20k a year? 50k? What if I told you there are people making
Little by little, we continue to connect with a positive feeling inside ourselves as the mind slows down, gradually slowing down to touch the center space. Little by little, it will feel natural for the mind. Little by little, it will feel natural for the mind to remain still, especially immersed in the peace energy. When the mind slows down, we can more easily touch that peace energy. Each time our mind awareness touches at the center, the energy inside us will start to flow, pervading us with that tide of peace energy. We might not yet see the energy, but the feeling will be clear. And the feeling of that peace energy continues to feed into our meditation. Of course, the subtle changes in the mind are not yet awakening or enlightenment, but yet the merit energy, being gradually accumulated, paves the way toward transcendental attainment. Without this energy, we can't go any deeper in our meditation, which is why we need to remain present, allowing ourselves to be filled to the brim with this peace energy. So we bide our time as the mind gradually fills with peace energy, a process that may require our patience. In the meantime, we rest the mind emotionlessly in order to connect with the stream of energy. Peace energy on the level of the mind has several transformative effects, including cleansing the mind of greed, hatred, and delusion, raising the quality of the mind, bringing happiness, stabilizing the mind, making the mind more flexible and radiant, increasing the potential of the mind, allowing better decisions to be taken, allowing more insightful analysis, and ensuring that our thinking becomes more thorough and comprehensive, noble and deep. For all these benefits, we first need to allow the peace energy to kick in. If we try to get ahead of ourselves when we don't have enough peace energy, then we won't get too far. Eventually in our meditation, we'll end up getting stuck. So let us remain in the center for a moment, absorbing the peace energy with the mind at a standstill. And before long, the sense of lightness will gradually dawn on us. Although some might dismiss merit energy and happiness as a lower path, the importance of their groundwork should never be underestimated. Whether it be finding the center within yourself, or balancing body and mind, realizing the limitations of the physical existence, sparking joy in life, or sharing that joy with others. All of these stages of the path are, apart from being a pleasure in and of themselves, are slowly paving the way through the accumulation of peace energy towards higher transcendental attainments. The nature of these so-called lower pleasures is to lead you towards the transcendental, without losing or abandoning the sense of comfort and well-being that you've already discovered in your meditation. So even while in the midst of meditational lightness and joyousness in life, you'll start to recognize the mundane world as somehow incomplete. Something in the conventional assumptions about life and the world that is off or doesn't click for us. At root, the thing holding us back from an accurate understanding is our own egoic structure, the false identity, the fictitious self, the presence of craving and the sense of being unsatiated. That seems to be what is ruining the world. So we suffer from egotistical attachment to the self, attachment to our body, attachment to family or friends or society. Sometimes we are able to sidestep these forms of attachment, but we are still attached to a sense of craving for results in meditation, because the process we're talking about here is something that's ingrained in every single fiber of our being. But with the help of our newfound meditational calm, we can slowly pull back, open and part the veil of delusion. And in this respect, the effort to succeed in meditation and success itself are sometimes as different in nature from one another as a rainbow is different from the rain shower that caused it. To prevent the missing pieces in our understanding, to provide the missing pieces in our understanding, we have to rise above the craving to have, the craving to be, or craving not to be. In other words, the mind needs to be neutral but comfortable. If your mind is truly neutral, you'll have the feeling, if I see something in my meditation, that would be good. But if I see nothing in my meditation, that would also be good. Especially when there's a feeling of expansion in your meditation without any anticipation of what will happen next. You also find that any day when you feel happy all day long and there's nothing to annoy you, then you'll be able to meditate particularly well, without the temptation to try to possess enlightenment or grasp at it. We need to go beyond the craving the Buddha referred to as the second noble truth, or grasping, tanha, that never-ending thirst for more of everything, and all-consuming and self-perpetuating assumption that makes us believe we need more, which explains why everyone in the world seems to be busily consuming and eating up the whole world. A tendency to grasping has created a deluded identity in every person that makes them believe they have the right to destroy natural resources to quench their unending thirst for more. And this tendency to greed ingrained in the mind of every person will gradually be uprooted and cleansed by meditation as our meditation dovetails gently from the warm, fluffy feeling to a change in the way we look at the world that aligns more closely with reality. There are many paradoxes surrounding the art of meditation. Some examples of this are the gateless gait and non-duality. Zen koans like that of one hand clapping. But no less confusing for the conceptual mind is the paradox of benefiting without benefit being something we can own, which is particularly true for meditation. It's also a paradox to gain benefit when the benefit is no longer personal or egotistical. So from its roots in the feel-good merit energy, meditation starts to have a permanent transformation in the way we see the world. Even as merit energy that keeps on running through you, it allows us to see through the delusions, in the illusions of self, and have greater potential to be present. There's more inspiration and energy throughput available to us as we meditate more deeply. And there's greater merit energy that we're able to access through our body-mind structure. You no longer feel caught up by identification with dramas, with the many problems that people find themselves in. It offers us a greater scope for compassion, love, creativity, lightness, harmony and joy, because it's not stuck in a web of delusion, propped up by fear. All of these things become more accessible to us. A lot of the concerns around death will have fallen away by now, because what we have already experienced in meditation is a death of the ego in a way, which is why they call it to die before you die. And so now that that has been experienced, so much more of life is available. Because if you aren't afraid of death, then you aren't afraid to live either. And it gives us the ability to coexist with paradox. Life no longer needs to make conventional sense, because once you've been through this process of transformation, everything makes sense in this new, very different way. And there's more magic in life. The magic of paradox is alive and well, because now you've seen through what everyone else has ever told you about what you are and who you are. You perceive more clearly than previously that you're overcoming the limited myopic human consciousness of the egotistical structure. And from this stage forth, beyond all these limits, you'll find yourself empowered positively, integrating body, emotions and spirit in alignment. That renders life much more positive, where you can wake up every day and jump out of bed and feel happy, and make your way through everyday life with a bounce in your step. Fully realizing now how merit energy can pave the way toward transcendental progress in our meditation, we focus our mind in this way for a few more moments in silence until we come to the appropriate time. Sabba Buddhanupavena, Sabba Dhammanupavena, Sabba Sanghanupavena, Sattha Soti Bhavantu Te. So if you'd like to come slowly and gently to the end of your meditation for today, you can gradually open your eyes again. If you feel at all uncomfortable, then slowly try changing to a more comfortable position before gradually finishing your practice. So hopefully you feel illuminated both inside and out by our full moon activity today. And this month brings us to the full moon day of October. And there's some creative genius out there who has given a different name to the full moon of every month to help us to reflect on each season and to contemplate how it affects us and the natural world. And it helps us to maybe delve deeper into where some of these names have come from, because some of them are rooted in European history, some more from American history. But the full moon day of this month is known as the Hunter's Moon, although we would not regard this as a particularly auspicious attribute from the Buddhist perspective. But it marks the end of the harvest season and brings a time to reflect on what we've accomplished during this latest lunar cycle. And other names for it are the October full moon, or the blood moon, the leaf falling moon, the moon where the birds fly south, the moon where the wind shakes off the leaves, and the changing season moon. And in Old England, the moon was also known as the winter filleth, or the winter full moon, because according to the weather lore of the old farmer's almanac, if October brings heavy frosts and winds, then then January and February will be mild. So I don't know what that qualifies as so far this year. But whether you're celebrating the harvest or hunter moon of October, the spiritual meaning is mostly focused on internal work and self-reflection, because it's the start of the darker half of the year. So we need to accept and welcome that darkness with open arms and spirit, and look back perhaps at the history of our own ancestors and the lessons they can teach us. Before the industrial era, then people focused on harvesting and preparing for the coming of winter, because failure to do so meant facing one's own death or mortality. And it's also a wonderful time for gratitude and appreciation of what nature has given us. You can perhaps feel that magical energy as the veil grows thin. You know the veil I'm talking about? Not the COVID mask. The veil between this world and the afterworld. Well, if you think of Halloween, and you probably know what I'm talking about. But the ability to communicate with our ancestors apparently is one of the features of this full moon, or loved ones being able to come more easily in touch with us at this time of the year. And it's also a chance to think of spiritual growth and goal setting. So it might be a time for us to snuggle up and work on DIY projects, or it might be a time to imbue some more spiritual meaning while we are canning and preserving fruit, or mimicking our ancestors or what they would have practiced in pre-industrialized times. But whether it is a time for us to think about the Halloween coming, cozy blankets and bonfires, that is up to us. But these are all the more conventional aspects that we tend to think about for the full moon. You may not have realized some of the special music we heard just now actually came from Thailand, because on this particular day, going back many thousands of years, there is a legend. Some people might believe it to be more than a legend, of a special spiritual animal known as a naga, like a big serpent, but with more magical powers. And today is a day that we come to the end of what's known as the 3-month Buddhist Lent, when monks don't travel around too much. And even in the time of the Buddha, then the Buddha had to stay put for 3 months of his year in order to follow his spiritual practice more intensely. And today is the day that that 3-month period comes to an end. The Buddha didn't always spend his time in the human realm for his 3 months. He had the luxury of being able to sometimes spend it in other realms. And seeing as his own mother passed away when he was only 7 days old, then one of the times when he decided to spend his 3 months outside the human realm, he actually went to visit his mother and teach her during that period, and only at the end of that time did he return. And he returned, to cut a long story short, in great splendor, such that even the celestial beings known as Nagas living at the bottom of the river were inspired by the sight of him returning to the human realm. And those Nagas didn't really know how to express their admiration, so what they did was they conjured up balls of fire which floated up from beneath the water and into the air above the river. These are known as Naga fireballs. And if you are very lucky in Thailand, on the border between Thailand and Laos, there's a river called the Mekong River. And if you go there at exactly this time of the year, you can sometimes, if you are a very fortunate person, see some of those fireballs still rising from the river. And no one has got a scientific explanation for how these could have occurred otherwise, because they only happen on one day of the year. But I'm not going to tell you that story. What I'm going to tell you about a little bit more today is what is more relevant to the cultivation of empathy, which is what the monks do at the end of the 3 months retreat. It is a time when, in Theravada Buddhism anyway, the monks come to the end of their 3 months. Even in England, we have to stay put for 3 months during what's known as the Rains retreat in Asia. And the origin of this tradition is that the monks were not supposed to walk around and trample on the newly growing rice shoots, which would cause the farmers especially to blame the monks for being careless. So the Buddha said that the monks should stay put during this season. And if they were to go anywhere, then they could not go for longer than 7 days. So that's the idea. So that's what the monks have been doing up until now. So all the Theravada temples throughout the world have been following this tradition. And at the end of this 3 months retreat, there is a tradition where the monks get together to do what? Not to celebrate their freedom, but in order to invite one another to offer any criticism which their fellow monks may have. So not to criticize one another, but to invite criticism from one another as a special day of the year when there's a sort of a moratorium or amnesty on criticism from one's juniors. So normally no one bats an eyelid when the elders or seniors start to criticize their youngers or underlings. But this is a time in the year when it can be turned the other way around, and even the elders and betters have to listen to any criticism which their juniors might have without getting angry about it, and with good grace. It's said that the sort of person who can gain wisdom from the world around them is actually a person who has to be very humble. In contrast to we sometimes tend to associate the idea of someone being smart with not having to bother to listen to anybody else's advice. But really, a truly wise person needs to be humble enough to learn and accept advice from anyone, no matter what their station in life. And there's a story in the Samyutta Nikaya, which is a part of the Buddhist scriptures, somewhere called the Susima Sutta, which tells about an incident with one of the most senior monks in the Buddha's community, known as Sariputta, who was very much renowned for his wisdom. And it concerns what these days you might call a wardrobe malfunction, because one day he had put on his waistcloth a little bit squint. So monks wear a sort of skirt thing, you may have noticed. And if you're not careful, it doesn't stay straight. So one day he had omitted to notice that his waistcloth was not on completely straight. And there was a 7-year-old novice came up to him and probably tugged the back of his robe and said, "Excuse me, sir, did you know that the corner of your waistcloth is hanging down?" And Sariputta immediately paid respect to this even very young novice. Why? Because if novice had not pointed out this thing to him, then he would not have known it for himself. So he treated even this very young, newly ordained novice as his teacher, because that novice had the courage to speak up in order to point out a fault which he hadn't noticed for himself. So if all the monks have been living together all the time for 3 months, then there are maybe many things which they could have done which they might hold against one another. So the monks have to say the words, if there is anything that you have seen or heard or suspect that I have transgressed in the past 3 months, whether it's going to be a verbal action, a physical action, or even a mental action, please feel free to give me the feedback or advice or criticism so that I can be better in future in my practice. So that's actually the tradition which the monks have, even though they might have to grit their teeth to do it, but they must gather together to say these words. And in the Dhammakaya tradition, we have the expression that someone passing along criticism to us is like someone who points out treasure to us. Because if we are stuck with a fixed view that we are already perfect, if we get complacent, then it just plays to our egos. And in reality, nobody is that perfect, and we all have faults, whether we'd like to admit it or not. But sometimes if we have someone else to reflect those faults to us like a mirror, then we can see our faults a lot more easily, and it allows, which is the point of allowing other people to speak up in order to criticize or explain our shortcomings. So it allows room for communication and makes it a lot easier to foster understanding in a community. So it's about a concept of empathy. I don't know if you can see that. Sometimes people think that empathy is like if you see someone crying, then you go and cry with them so that they feel that they're not alone. But this is like a much more proactive thing, which is you might wonder to yourself, how might I be upsetting other people, and let me go and ask them about it so that I don't upset them anymore in the future. So they don't need to leave them until they're in tears before I realize that something is not quite right here. So it's a little bit like putting yourself in another person's shoes, like a golden rule, treating others as you'd like to be treated yourself. But you can see that sometimes the things which you consider just fine or like neutral or not really taking any liberties are in fact treading on other people's toes without you realizing it. And if you don't ask them, then you never realize that. And society becomes more fragmented as a result, even in the small societies that we might count as our homes or our families. What might look like a peaceful family might actually be stonewalling. You know stonewalling? Where people are just like not on speaking terms anymore. It's actually quite peaceful, because like no one speaks to anyone. They say, go and tell him I want to say that. Looks quite peaceful on the surface, but under the surface there's a lot of things which are left unsaid. So this is actually a time for monks to fix this, so the peace is actually peace that has been brought out in the open. And that way there's a lot more openness and a sense of understanding in the community and empathy occurring as a result of this. So, if you would like something to take away from today, or something you might like to try out for yourself, especially on this occasion of the full moon of the end of the Buddhist Lent, then it is maybe to dare to invite criticism, as the monks do at this time of year, from the people who are close to you. So, you don't need to sort of post it on Facebook or do Twitter, otherwise you might get more than you asked for or you were expecting, but maybe with people who you trust to be compassionate to you, to invite them to offer any criticism which they may have. And secondly, what they might give you might not be that well thought out, because some people, they just don't think very deeply about what advice to pass on to you. It might be like just their getting back at you. But nonetheless, you should consider all the advice given and see how much truth there is in it. In my old temple in America, we didn't just do it in Pali language, where we just say it as a ritual to get it over with, but they actually had a piece of paper for every person. And hopefully you can't remember the handwriting. But what they did is they put the name at the top of the paper, and then they divide it in 2 columns. And in order to keep it quite light-hearted, you had to write down, thinking of that person with loving kindness, write down one thing which you admire about that person, and then one thing which you think they could do better on. And then fold over the paper and hand it on to the next person in the family or the community, until by the end of it, especially in a community of about 40, where I was in the States, you end up with that piece of paper coming back to you. And you start by looking at the nice column. Oh, look, everyone says, oh, this person is so, lots of ability or something, or smiles a lot, or is always in a good temper. It's usually what they write when they can't think of anything. And then you look at this terrible other column with all the things which they think you ought to do better on, and some of it is just like completely missed the mark. So you can sort of forgive them for that. But the interesting thing is, before you look at it, it's like you know what's going to be in there. It's almost like you know all the faults in yourself, but you've been turning a blind eye to them, even without people mentioning it. So in a sense, it's like we know what we need to fix in ourselves, but we just don't want to go there yet. Or there's a few little things that we want to keep back. Yeah, it's quite scary. All your hair stands on end before you look at what people have actually written, and you think, oh, got away with it for another year, they haven't noticed yet. But then maybe they've got another set of things which they've written down instead. But that is what's known as self-discovery. Yeah, you might want to try it, or you might not. It's up to you. But it might be something which you can learn from the monastic traditions at this time of year, which you can take away as a little exercise for a fun practice in your small communities at home, and learn at this time of year alongside the monks. But for today, I just leave you with a little bit of news, which is that these online sessions actually happen on the European level every Saturday, not just on the full moon days, so you might like to be able to catch up with that. If you are one of the online viewers who don't find it easy to join us here in Surrey in England, so every day on a Saturday between 7 and 8 p.m. British time, between 8 and 9 if you're on European time. Outside of the online things, there's the MindGem app, which I can encourage you to meditate along with. which is like a free insight timer with Dhammakaya meditation teachings from a variety of monks. And for the full moon next month, we come to a tradition known as floating of candle lanterns, and we now have a pond, at least in Woking, to float things in. So we're on Thursday, 18th of November next month. So you can bring your own candle rafts, or you can maybe borrow ones from the temple, which we might have a few of prepared for you. Apart from this, I'd like to remind everyone that this coming Sunday, is the Katina ceremony in London, Woking. For anyone who would like to join or bring along friends and family, you are welcome to do that. Some of it takes place in Thai language, I will warn you in advance. But in spite of that, the bits that will probably be the most meaningful for you would be probably the morning session with a little bit of meditation, arms round. There'll be about 15 monks who go around with the alms bowls, which you don't normally see here. And then there will be a lot of food, a lot more than usual food available at about 11:30 onwards. And then the actual Katina ceremony, which is a robe offering ceremony, starts with the procession about 12:30. So if you're interested in that, or to come for a part of it, you don't need to stay until the end, because it does tend to go deeper and deeper into Thai language without any translations towards the end generally. So at that time you might say enough is enough and go home, but it is certainly a nice ceremony to see, especially as last year when only 20 people were allowed to attend according to the COVID regulations. So we're looking forward to getting back to normal this year. So I will now finish off and hand back over to Natalie in case there are any questions or comments, suggestions which you might like to share at this point, including those of you online. Yes.
Anyone at all? So yeah, if not so, I have a few questions, just on behalf of everyone. As Luang Pi have mentioned about the Pavarana ceremony for the monks, that they do confession and everything, I would like to ask if there is any role for confession in the life of people who are not monks too.
Yeah, sometimes confession immediately makes you think of like Catholic Church or something like that. And in those traditions, it's the idea is that if you confess something, it makes all the badness like go away, and like you're cleansed, and like it doesn't matter anymore. I think in Buddhist tradition, we wouldn't go as far as to say that all the bad things you did have just gone away. But confession, even for lay people, especially if you like own up to something which you've done, you admit it. It shows that you are turning over a new leaf. The fact that you have sort of admitted it to a third person means that you are sort of committing yourself to do better in the future. So sometimes the fact that a person owns up to something bad that they've done is actually a positive sign that they are turning the corner on whatever that problem was in the past. And I think, especially for things like the 12 steps of AA, the fact that people have got community and like a sponsor who helps them through is really important, because it's not just hiding your own weaknesses in your own mind anymore, but it's like admitting it to another person who can then give you that advice and criticism, because they now know what your weakness is. So they'll be able to help you through it. So confession, even for lay people, is actually quite relevant. But it's not seen as like getting rid of the problem, but it's seen as turning the corner on the problem. Yes, Edward. Yeah, I think the important thing for the connection with ancestors, especially those who have already passed, especially if you like to do more than them than just sort of remember them or like honor them, is to whenever you do something particularly positive in your life, in the meditation I was talking about this peace energy or merit, which is generated in the mind when you meditate or when you do anything good at all, is that it can also be shared for the benefit of other people. And I don't mean just like the people sitting close to you, but I mean even people across that veil between this life and the next life. So that, for example, if your mother passed away and you're thinking fondly of her, but you miss her, is that whenever you're doing something particularly good, like creating a meditation garden or whatever, is that you should think of her and make a wish within yourself that she share a part of the goodness coming of what you're doing right now. And in meditation, when you're spreading loving kindness, so you're spreading the brightness of the candle within yourself for the benefit of other people, then at the end you should have a little way of including in that all the loved ones of yours who have passed away as well, because it can actually reach them. The power of intention can cross that veil in a way that presence or other sorts of physical help can no longer reach them. So the power of the mind can bridge that gap in quite an effective way. Yeah. To be generous with your. You may think intentions are nothing. It's just all in the mind. But on the level of those who have already passed, then they are also in the mind as well, because that's all they have left of them. So it can actually cross that bridge and reach them just from the power of our intention.
So I have another question. Is you have mentioned a lot about accepting criticism from other, but I would like to know if it is also sometimes necessary to go easy on yourself and have some self-empathy too.
Yeah, the topic I had today may sound a little bit like hardcore. It's like most people have quite enough criticism from other people anyway without having to go looking for it. They might say, can I have the day off? I think, yes, you do need to be forgiving of yourself and give yourself space in order to be able to accept that criticism in a way that is positive and helps you grow, not just to sort of add to the woes which you have in your life from all these terrible people who've got it in for you, who are constantly finding things to criticize you without any sensitivity at all from how you feel. So yes, the two need to be kept in balance. Yes, it's good to have the information, and also you need to not want to beat yourself up every time that you realize that you're not perfect. You need to hold the two in balance. Yes, indeed.
Satujaka, go in the middle way. So yeah.
I think everything about the mind is to do with the vibration energy which you are talking about. And you could almost say it's like tuning in to the positive sense or the most efficient wavelength on which the mind can operate. The problem most people have in their life is they believe they're nothing more than their physical existence, so that they are limited by that. So they then miss out on the connection with other people. They miss out with the connection with this life, next life. They miss out with the whole vibe of the world in general and the environment and everything like that. simply by the fact they're limited by their believing that they're nothing more than their physical nature. So everything to do with meditation, and that by extension everything to do with peace energy and merits and all of this sort of thing, it actually is all to do with this sort of art of starting to work with yourself on that transcendental level by which you can connect, and you're not all on your own, and you're not a nation of one, but you are actually connected and part of a much broader and more vibrant society. Yeah. So that's what meditation is all about.
Thank you, Rana. Yes, we are all energy, after all. So yeah, anybody else? Very nice subject today, isn't it? Yeah, criticism and everything. Yeah, it's come to an end now. So yeah, and yeah, on the next one will be on the 18th of November, as Longpi said, the next full moon. We'll have a big day on this Sunday. If anyone can make it, welcome. I know all in Thai, but we'll try to do it in English as well, if we can. Okay, I believe next Tuesday we still have a class.
Tuesday there's still a class being held, but because having done our Katina here, where all the monks are off to help our colleagues in Scotland do the same one, on Thursday there will not be a class this week exceptionally, and then the week after back to normal again.
Yeah. Back to normal on the 1st.
Yeah, after Halloween.
After Halloween.
Everything will be normal again.
Start again. But yeah. Okay, everyone. If anyone would like to pay respect to our teaching monk by bowing 3 times. Bow. Bow. Bow.
So may all of you be blessed with happiness, success, prosperity in life. May any criticism you receive be well graciously accepted and be useful for you as a treasure that can lead you onwards towards spiritual perfection easily, now and forevermore.
Sadhu.